All right, 4 exciting new cards today, including the Paladin quest.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
Exciting stuff, but if you're short on time, you can hit the quick reviews link in the description to see the cards and my 5-star ratings really quick. Otherwise, let's jump into some detailed reviews. First off here, let's talk about Making Mummies, the Paladin Legendary Quest, which reads, play 5 Reborn minions. The reward is Emperor Wraps, 2-mana hero power, that summons you a 2/2 copy of a friendly minion. So first off, let's talk about that reward. I do think this is a potentially powerful hero power. A 2/2 minion for 2 mana is reasonable, and then if you build your deck in a way to support it, for instance, you have a lot of Reborn minions, maybe some Death Rattles, Divine Shields. There are a handful of different scenarios where this becomes really good, because suddenly you have a 2/2 minion with like a really powerful Death Rattle, or a Reborn where it comes back with 1 health, or maybe you just get a bundle of Divine Shield minions as well. So as long as you have something in hand, this is going to generate a nice little stat bump on the board. Now, I will say that like in the late game, is a 2/2 stat bump going to be enough or impactful or influential enough? Maybe if it has taunt, it's something that can help you keep up with the board or rush or charge. But in some cases, just like playing a minion out that's only a 2/2 isn't going to be enough to like really swing the game or do anything defensive enough or immediate enough, and your opponent's just kind of like, well, okay, cool. There's another downside to this too, which is that you do have to have a minion available, so it's not like this infinite resource. If you whiff on a minion draw, you only have spells in hand, or if you get a minion that's not particularly high synergy with Emperor Wraps, then it gets considerably weaker over time. So a couple challenges there, even in the reward. It's not like this dream scenario. Potentially good in the right kind of deck if you get it fast enough, but still a little bit limited in its scope and in its scaling towards the late game. Beyond that, there is also a challenge here that this only works with Reborn minions. So you already have to build your deck and structure your deck in a way where you're running cards that aren't necessarily going to be the most optimized things. We are going to get some cool Reborn cards even in this video, like the Myrrh, a nice little cheap one here that'll help you activate this quest. There are going to certainly be even more, so getting the quest done probably isn't going to be hard, but is getting the quest done with good minions going to be possible given the Reborn pool? Hard to say at this point, but it's always still going to be a restriction in how you build your deck. So you're going to occasionally have to sacrifice cards that are a little bit better just to make sure you have consistency for the quest. So that's a little bit of a mark against this card as well. And then yet again, that means that this is really only going to be working within this expansion. Certainly Reborn cards aren't going anywhere in their standard format rotation, but they're probably only going to be really supported now. So if this doesn't work now, it's probably never going to work very well. Unless perhaps you just eventually get some minions that are insane with Emperor Wraps. But I think we already have those. We already have a lot of good Death Rattles. There's a lot of good mechs that are great with Emperor Wraps as well. So this has kind of a one expansion timeline, I think, where it has to line up and work well, or otherwise it's probably going to fail long term. So that makes the likelihood of this card succeeding a little lower than we might see in other cards, which probably have a longer window or runway in order to achieve some success. So all in all, what that means here is I think we have a card that's a little bit limited in its impact and like influence over the game once it actually becomes active. Might be a little bit hard to build a deck that supports this one. So to me, it looks like it's going to be a struggle to get off the ground with Making Mummies. There's always possibilities that some awesome card comes along and it's just good enough with this hero power and you can make enough cool copies that this gets there. So I'm not saying this card is hopeless. I just think it has a lot of challenges to overcome to get there. I should also add, from a flavor standpoint, this one's kind of weird. It feels way more like a priest kind of effect than a paladin one, like making copies of stuff is priest, resurrecting stuff has traditionally been priest as well. So I can see here that Sir Finley has somehow got the power to resurrect stuff in his journeys in the League of Explorers. But although paladins do have res in World of Warcraft, this one still just has some things that don't feel like they line up super well to me. So moving on here, we have the Mummy, a 1-mana 1/1 Murloc with Reborn. Just going to go ahead and say we absolutely called this one in our prediction video based on the artwork, literally down to the stat line and everything. That's pretty cool. We didn't get the name, although it's pretty obvious. We could have got that too, I think, if we tried for a few minutes. But we have here essentially Mecharoo that's a Murloc. The Reborn aspect here means that it's essentially just like a Death Rattle because it has 1 health anyway, where you're summoning another 1/1 minion here. Now, what that means is we have some precedent to showcase that this is certainly a playable sort of card. Mekaru was good. Possessed Villager was good. I think Myrmh's going to be solid too, particularly in any kind of Murloc shell where you like summoning Murlocs. Think about cards like Murloc Tidecaller getting buffed twice from something like this. It's a cheap Murloc, which is great with cards like Underbelly Angler. So whether it's Murloc Paladin, Murloc Shaman, maybe just a deck that likes playable early game minions, even if they don't care about Murloc synergies, something like Myrmh makes a lot of sense as that sticky early game board presence. Next up here is the Expired Merchant for Warlock. You guys know I'm going to like this one. 2 mana, 2/1, Battlecry, discard your highest cost card, and Death Rattle, add 2 copies of it to your hand. So thank God discard is not totally dead. We still do have some discard remnant stuff from Rostakon's Rumble. Of course, still some in the classic set and basic set as well. And this is another controlled discard. We've seen previously the discards that discarded your lowest cost stuff, but this one goes the other way and discards your highest cost stuff. But it does so in a way where you potentially generate a lot of additional value because this Death Rattle gives you 2 of those things. So for instance, you can create controlled scenarios where you have some really high cost, awesome card that you want extra copies of, and boom, now you get 2 of those super awesome high cost cards, be it a legendary. You know, in wild format, a lot of people are talking about Blood Reaver Gul'dan, for instance, to summon a big board of demons twice. That's kind of crazy. There are some infinite value combo possibilities out there with cards like Dinomancer, which can be kind of ridiculous and wild. In standard format, I don't see quite as many home runs that exist, but that's okay. A card like this just means there's potential there. And if we don't see the lines right now, they might still show up later where some card just fulfills this in a beautiful way, and having 2 of those is going to be an incredible power spike. And I don't really think you're sacrificing much along the way to do this. This is something you could still just play in the late game right before you wanted to play your highest cost card. Long as it was in hand, you could play it in the early game too to just set it up for later. It's a 2/1, so it's kind of a minion that's not much of a roadblock, but can occasionally take a trade, get a little bit of onboard value, force a ping, etc. Now, there is some risk that a card like this could, say, get transformed, could get silenced, devolved, all those sorts of things. So, turn into a Murloc now with Plague of Murlocs. So there is some risk you could lose your discarded card and never get it back, so you might want to kill this yourself, but Warlock has historically been pretty good at those sorts of things. You can Mortal Coil this, kill it in a Hellfire. Wild format's got Defile to set it up beautifully. So I don't see any real risks or challenges there. If you're building a deck to support this card, you're going to have ways to make sure that it goes off effectively, which means this is a pretty neat little tool. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a guaranteed hit. It may not ever line up, and it may not work, but there's a pretty good chance some deck out there could use this in a nice way. Whether it has other discard synergies or not, I think it's still just got some potential to generate additional resources, additional value in a controlled and predictable way, which makes this a solid card. And then finally here we have a new spell for Druid, Hidden Oasis. It comes in at 6 mana. It is a choose 1 spell, and it reads summon a 6/6 Ancient with Taunt or restore 12 health. So a really nice defensively minded choose 1 spell here. You get a big 6/6 Taunt, which is okay for 6 mana, right? It's not like the greatest thing in the world. You're not super excited about it, but it's a reasonable enough stat line. In a pinch, it can serve as a both threat on the board as a big 6/6, but also a defensive wall as necessary. It'd probably be a little better as something like a 4/8 to just make it more defensively minded, but ultimately still reasonable for 6 mana. Alternatively, you can go for a 12 health heal, which is a little bit overcosted at 6 mana. We've seen some 12 health heals in the past, things like 4 mana, even Branching Pass, giving you 12 armor for 4 mana. So compared to other things, this feels a little bit expensive, but in a pinch, you might still be willing to do that. Now, the important implications for this card are with the Druid's Quest, which is going to give you both choose 1 options, which means you're going to get a 6/6 Taunt and a 12 health heal, which actually sounds pretty insane. Like, that's really defensively minded and a great result for 6 mana. That is like an 8 or 9 mana total play. So in a world where Quest Druid is a thing, a card like Hidden Oasis would be the perfect sort of payoff for that deck to survive into the late game with a big mid-game stabilization play like this one. So In a vacuum on its own, Hidden Oasis looks like an okay card. Neither half gets you super excited. The flexibility is a little bit promising depending on what you need. But in a quest world, Hidden Oasis actually looks like a pretty solid card. So where does it end up from a assessment standpoint? Probably somewhere in the middle for me. Like, you're not necessarily going to always have a Quest Druid deck in the meta, and in those cases, Hidden Oasis is a little bit weak. If there is a Quest Druid deck that pops up, which I think is a possibility, although certainly not a guarantee, Hidden Oasis looks like a pretty solid inclusion in that sort of environment. So what that means to me is this is an okay looking card. It's not anything I'm losing my mind over, but it looks like it has some potential to be played in specific environments. That wraps it up for our detailed reviews. Now let's jump into the quick reviews. Making Mummies is a 3-star card. Myrrh is a 4-star card. Expired Merchant is a 4-star card. Hidden Oasis is a 3-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this video. Of course, more reviews are going to be coming your way every day that cards come out. So please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy them. Doing my best to get them out as quickly as possible while still only putting out a reasonable number, lining them up once, maybe twice a day in some very special cases. That said, please share your thoughts on these cards and all future cards too. I always like hearing what you guys have to say. But until then, thanks much for watching. And until next time, game on.